Good evening. Welcome everyone to the December 4th, 2019 City of Murfreesboro Planning Commission meeting. We'll call the meeting to order, and we do have a quorum present tonight. So we will begin with our new business. The first item under new business is a mandatory referral right-of-way abandonment to consider the abandonment of a small portion of Williams Drive right-of-way. Volunteer Behavior Health is the applicant. Ms. Green.
Thank you. Good evening. Our first public hearing today is to consider an item that's for a right-of-way abandonment. It is for a very, very small portion of property. It's not even 1/10 of an acre. Essentially, it's where Williams Drive dead ends, and there was just a little curb cut. And it was expected that the road network would be different, but with the development of the avenues, we realized that that road will not extend. So back in 2014, our transportation director at that time asked me to clean up that right-of-way and make them just straight lines and get rid of the little bump outs. And so what you have before you is the third time that you've seen an action similar to this to abandon a very small portion of right-of-way that really only affects one property. The application was made by Volunteer Behavioral Health, and Matt Taylor is here this evening to represent the applicants. And I did ask him to make this application so that we can follow through on that endeavor. As we like to make all right-of-way abandonment requests contingent, if you do approve them, on several factors. One is that the applicant provide the city legal department any necessary documentation to prepare the quitclaim deed and for recording the quitclaim deed, that a plat depicting the abandonment and relocation of the subject property be recorded, and that utility easements be dedicated. Murfreesboro Water and Sewer Department does have a water line nearby, so our request would be to abandon that right-of-way, but to maintain easements on top where that right-of-way was for the Murfreesboro Water and Sewer Department. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, because it's a right-of-way abandonment, we would ask that you schedule or you conduct a public hearing.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Ms. Green or any of the staff before we start? Okay, so our first public hearing tonight for this right-of-way, mandatory referral and right-of-way abandonment. If you would like to speak on this item or any of our future items tonight, you will come forward to the podium and state your name and address. You can make your comments either for or against the item. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes, and please make all of your comments directly to the Planning Commission and not to other members of the audience or developers. That being said, we will call this first meeting, public hearing to order, and we will open the first public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak. Didn't think everybody came for that one tonight, so we will close the public hearing, and if there are no comments or questions, we will be ready for a motion.
Make a motion we approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion's made in a second. All in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Our second public hearing tonight is for a zoning application for approximately 2.41 acres located along Franklin Road west of Rucker Lane to be rezoned from CF, Commercial Fringe, to PCD, Planned Commercial Development, and Tire World PCD is the applicant. And Ms. Rush has this one.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Commission. The applicant, Mr. Randy Lopez of Tire World, is requesting to rezone the property from commercial fringe to planned commercial development to allow for the development of 2 buildings, Tire World's tire store and their corporate office. The request for rezoning is because motor vehicle services is not a permitted land use within the current zoning district, CF. With the planned commercial development, this would allow for the proposed use, and would also ensure that the development be buffered from the adjoining residential uses and a church land next door. The adjacent zoning to the east is commercial fringe, and to the west and south is RS 15, single-family residential, and RM, Rutherford County, medium-density residential, and the property to the north is zoned RS 15. Surrounding development is primarily commercial to the east, and has single-family residential duplexes to the west and the River Oaks Community Church to the west and south. The future land use map, Murfreesboro 2035, does identify this as an auto, urban, or general commercial as the most appropriate land use. The rezoning that's requested, PCD, is consistent. The use is consistent with this land use, so that's important to note. The request that we're asking for this evening is that you conduct a public hearing and then make a recommendation for the City Council. The applicant is being represented by Mr. Matt Taylor, and he's here tonight to make a presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rush. Hello, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Ms. Rush. Thank you, Chair Lady Jones, members of the Planning Commission. I am Matt Taylor of SEC, and I'm accompanied tonight by Mr. Randy Lopez, the applicant on the project. Mr. Lopez owns several Tire World locations around Middle Tennessee and has picked this destination as his next retail opportunity and the site of his future corporate headquarters. So we're excited to present to you this project. The site is about 2.4 acres located on the south side of Franklin Road, which is shown in blue, and to the west of Rucker Lane, shown in orange here. Today, the site is mostly open pasture or cropland. I don't believe there's any trees on site. As Ms. Rush said, the site is currently zoned commercial fringe, with commercial fringe to the east, and then RS-15 to the south and west, which would be the bulk or all of the River Oaks Community Church property. And again, this does comply with the comprehensive plan, which shows this is general commercial. We've designed the site to be house two buildings to create that campus feel. The most northern building would be more retail, customer based. This is where we would service the vehicles, sell the tires, change the tires. And the southern building is Randy's corporate headquarters. He wants to move all of his back of house, admin type services to this location so he can service all of his business locations from this one location. So between those two buildings, we've got about 14,000 square feet total. Both of those buildings are proposed to be 1 stories in nature. We meet or exceed the city's parking requirements for this site, and we do all that and still maintain over 1/3 of our property as open space. We've proposed to screen all of our parking from Highway 96, as well as extensive buffering along the west and south where we abut the church property. And then we've also planned for formal open spaces and pedestrian connectivities back to Highway 96, as well as between the two buildings themselves. The site has excellent connectivity. We will gain our access to Highway 96 through an existing curb cut. It's shown in the upper right-hand picture, or upper right-hand corner of this picture, kind of in white. That entrance was installed with the Toots project to the east there, and we'll connect to that. The church has planned a driveway connection along our western boundary, which we will have rights to connect to once that connection, or once that drive is constructed. And then the undeveloped commercial properties to the east, once those are developed, we'd be able to connect into their system as well. So as you can see, the property will have excellent connectivity once the area is developed out. Randy's very proud of the project. He wants to make it his corporate headquarters, so he's worked very hard on the site as well as the architecture to create a campus feel that's high-end, that meets and exceeds the design guideline requirements. I think you'll see in the next few slides that we've done that through providing defined entryways, multiple building planes, and doing that while maintaining a maximum 30-foot building height to be respective of our neighbors and surrounding areas. The upper picture here is the elevation that would face Highway 96. You can see we've raised that middle section, created a nice defined base, middle, and cap for the building. The 2 garage doors on each side, those will be frosted so you can't see in. Those will also be automatic doors that open and close very quickly and automatic, so that they're not open any longer except to let a car pull in. Those would be quick checks where you get your alignments checked, as well as a quick lube. We're using good quality materials here, brick, stone. We're using EIFS in limited areas as accent points. We've continued those same materials and patterns and colors along each side. Here, the garage doors wouldn't necessarily be frosted, but they would still remain decorative in nature. There will be glass, aluminum metal for trim, and then we're maintaining that base going down the side and introducing some different brickwork, brick colors, brick patterns as some inlays to break up those facades. Then we continue those same elements to the office building in the back. Same materials, same proportions on the base in the middle and the cap, and a very well-defined entryway. Just laying out all the materials I talked about. And then we have called for 2 formal open spaces. One of those is on the northern side of the retail center. This will be more geared toward our customers, trying to get the most bang for their buck here. And then the southern one would wrap around the entire office building. That would be more employee-based. Both of those will introduce kind of higher-end walking surfaces, either through colored concrete or pavers, as well as seating and enhanced landscaping. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have buffers shown on the west and south, like we show in orange here. That'd be a type D buffer according to the city zoning ordinance. We'll continue to maintain foundation plantings where we don't have doors, and then have a well-landscaped sign, and of course screening our parking as well as our dumpster enclosure. Those buffers will contain mainly evergreens such as the magnolias. Allowable uses, as Ms. Rush said, this is currently zoned commercial fringe, so that is a very wide spectrum of uses. It just happens not to allow ours, so we feel like we've been very considerate in our allowable uses as well as complementary to the surrounding areas. We know that our use needs to be in a commercial zone, but we think it also needs to be next to residential. Those are our customers. We want to be very convenient and accessible to them, and so we think that this will complement the area very well. And so we've taken that broader CF zone, that list, and pared it way down to just be specific to our site, to these, say, 8 or 9 uses that we show here. And so we've taken a very broad base and made that very detailed in this booklet. So I'll be happy to answer any questions now or after the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any questions, Mr. Taylor, before the public hearing? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We will open the public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak on this item. Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Have questions or comments from the planning commission?
I'll just make a comment. I think it's a well-thought-out plan. I think the building design looks great, and I'm pleased with the limitation of allowable uses because we know exactly what we're going to get. And with that, I'll make a motion that we approve subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? Then all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Item C is a zoning application for approximately 0.3 acres located along East Vine Street and Kerr Avenue to be rezoned from RS8 to RS4. Will Crunk is the applicant. Ms. Kerr.
Thank you, Chair Jones, members of the Planning Commission. This property is located at 712 East Vine Street, is at the southwest corner of East Vine Street and Kerr Avenue. The property totals 0.3 acres and is currently developed with a duplex and is zoned RS8. The applicant is requesting to be rezoned to RS4. The RS4 zone permits single-family residential lots of 4,000 square foot in area. The applicant intends to subdivide the property into 3 single-family lots. The minimum lot requirements for RS4 zone are that each lot consists of a minimum of 4,000 square feet with a minimum of 40-foot lot width and a maximum of 40% lot coverage. Also, this property lies within the CCO district, and the revised CC overlay district regulations are currently pending before City Council, and if approved as proposed, they will impact certain bulk requirements and such as the lot coverage and building setbacks. This property is located 1 block south of East Main Street, and adjacent properties across the street to the north of the subject property are zoned RS 15. Across the street on Kerr Avenue to the east of the subject property, properties are zoned RS 8, while the parcels adjacent to the property to the south and the west are zoned RS 4. Further to the east, on the corner of East Vine Street and Hancock Street, there are 3 parcels that are zoned CL, Commercial Local. The CCO currently allows some limited commercial uses in RS4 zone, either by right or by special use permit. The revised CCO regulations pending before the City Council would eliminate the allowance for those commercial uses in RS4. The future land use map of the 2035 Comprehensive Plan recommends that this property be developed with a suburban residential land use character. This classification intends to serve as a transition from urban to rural residential developments and is predominantly located along the outskirts of the city limits. The comprehensive plan states that RS 15, RS 12, and RS 10 are existing zoning districts that are compatible with suburban residential with dwelling units per acre at 2.0 to 3.54. Neither the existing RS 8 or the proposed RS 4 zones are among the compatible existing zoning districts. The single-family residential detached dwellings allowed by the RS 4 zone are consistent with types of uses recommended in the suburban residential land use character. But the zone will enable a greater density than recommended by the comprehensive plan. Subdividing the properties to create 3 single-family properties would be a density of 10 dwelling units per acre. This area of parcel is already inconsistent with the suburban residential land use character with respect to density. The Planning Commission will need to consider whether the recommended land use character is fitting for this property and the surrounding area, or whether it is an appropriate instance to deviate from the future land use map. Planning Commission will need to conduct a public hearing and discuss this rezoning request and formulate a recommendation to City Council.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions before we open the public hearing?
And
Yes.
Madam Chair, the applicant is here if you have any questions for him as well.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Kerr, what is the structure just to the west of this property on the corner of Hancock and Vine Street?
Structure to the west. Right there. Oh, let's see, that one is the,
There's 2 lots there.
I believe that those are the houses that Mr. Hopkins just rebuilt on those 2 corners.
Right, okay,
Yes.
gotcha, okay.
that is correct.
And those are RS4 already? Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we will open the public hearing and ask anybody to come forward that would like to speak on this application. Okay. Close the public hearing. Ask for any further comments or questions from the Planning Commission.
So I know we're not discussing the details of the plan, but the only question I have is on Vine, clearly there's no parking on Vine. So, you know, whoever does this is gonna be limited on their parking capability. So that's the only question I have for us to think about is how do you park this if you put 3 lots in it?
So, Ms. Carter, we have to have a driveway and on-site parking?
Yes, ma'am. As I said, it would be divided into 3 separate lots, and each lot would have to have 4,000 square foot of area, and they will have to meet the parking regulations to be on-site parking.
Okay. Question?
If there are no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, moving on, item D is an annexation plan of services and annexation petition for approximately 1.6 acres located along Yearwood Avenue. Greenland Partners LLC is the applicant. Ms. Kerr.
Subject property is located on the west side of Yearwood Avenue, north of East Main Street and Louise Street. The study area consists of approximately 1.6 acres, including one entire parcel and a portion of another parcel. The eastern portion of the parcel at 219 Yearwood Avenue is within the unincorporated county, while the western portion of the parcel is within the city Murfreesboro limits. Each parcel is developed with a single-family dwelling. The property owner has filed a written petition to have the remainder of the property at 219 Yearwood Avenue and the entire parcel at 213 Yearwood Avenue annexed into the city limits. The study area is located within the city's urban growth boundary and is contiguous with the existing city limits on its north and west boundaries. Staff has prepared a plan of services for the annexation of the property. It has been updated this week and has been handed out to you prior to the meeting. It indicates that the city will be able to provide services to the subject property upon annexation. The Murfreesboro Water Resources Department states that the developer would be responsible for extending public gravity sewer lines from Louise Street north along Yearwood Drive to the subject property, and she would assume all financial responsibilities for all mainline extensions. Additionally, the proposed development is within an area that currently has very limited sewer capacity, and only low sewer users will be allowed to fill these tenant spaces. An application to have the property zoned planned commercial development simultaneously with the annexation has also been filed. The zoning request will be the next item on the agenda. This annexation was advertised to include approximately 650 feet of Yearwood Avenue right-of-way, which the County Road Board denied the request to consent to annexation of the right-of-way. So city staff requests that any recommendations made to City Council would not include the approval of the right-of-way annexation. The Planning Commission will need to conduct a public hearing, after which it will need to discuss the annexation petition and plan of services and formulate a recommendation for City Council.
Okay. Can I go ahead and ask a question then regarding where you mentioned the sewer service? So, and you were saying that, it would need to be a low, so that the use that we'll be looking at on the next item would comply with the available sewer capacity?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And Ms. Jones, just did want to mention, is I think that most of the people here are probably to speak regarding the zoning. This first public hearing is just pertaining to the annexation of the 2 parcels and the plan of services for the 2 parcels, as opposed to the zoning plan. That will be the subject of the next public hearing.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Any questions before we?
I don't know who can answer this, but you mentioned that the County Road Board did not want to approve. That doesn't usually work that way, does it? Or is there a reason why, or we don't know?
I'll let Matthew answer. Mr. Blumley.
There was quite a bit of discussion at the road board meeting on Monday morning, and I think the bottom line was that there was some concern about access onto Yearwood Avenue, and I think that was the main reason for their objection. So they denied our request to consent to annex that right-of-way.
Okay.
From a safety standpoint, we generally always look for multiple access points, though, so that would kind of be against our general philosophy of this as to how to handle if we don't do access points onto Yearwood, which ultimately would mean Yearwood Drive would be brought up to city standards if the road were ever developed. I mean, it would actually put more money into the roadway.
Yes, sir. I believe those are all good points. And of course, the connectivity issue is something that we'll discuss during the zoning public hearing. And when we were at the road board, the issue was jurisdiction of whether or not it was to be in the county or the city. They made the decision of not to grant us consent to annex that right of way. And so that's why we have eliminated that right of way from the plan of services. But as far as access points, I think that we'll have additional comments on that during the zoning item.
I think we're fortunate enough to have some county representatives here in the audience as well, so maybe we'll hear in the public hearing their understanding of why we're doing that, so.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and as Mr. Blomley mentioned, this first public hearing is for the annexation plan of services and annexation petition. The next public hearing will be regarding the zoning request. So if anybody would like to come forward and speak on the annexation plan of services and annexation petition, please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of the Planning Commission. Mike Hughes, Rutherford County Engineer. And just to follow up with what Mr. Blomley said about the Yearwood, it was more or less mixing commercial traffic in a established residential neighborhood. That was our big concern. Functionality, yes, it would be nice to have another access into down to East Main to the traffic signal. But our thought was we have a traffic signal at Alumni Drive, you have a traffic signal at East Main. You can coordinate those signals to allow a longer gap, to allow vehicles to turn in and out. There is a plan to add a left turn lane in the median into the development, coming south on Rutherford into the development. So we thought as this site, as many others, Northwest Broad, Lassiter, just all throughout the city, there's dozens and dozens of commercial establishments that have a median in front, a median cut, and they do not have the benefit of a rear access. So we felt it best not to mix the commercial traffic into a residential subdivision. And I thought if I lived in that neighborhood, I would not want commercial vehicles traveling down my road. So I'll try to happy to answer any questions if you'd like. But as Matthew stated, they denied the annexation of Yearwood, but they also denied any driveway connection onto Yearwood as well.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Oh,
Mr.
sure,
Hughes,
go
if
ahead.
that's okay. Is it, by the way, thanks for taking my call today.
Yes, sir.
Talking through this issue. And I didn't think about this until you just said this, but when you say commercial traffic, you're not talking about commercial vehicles per se. You're talking about just...
Well, it could be passenger cars, the number of vehicles traveling through the subdivision, but, heavy delivery trucks, anything going through a residential subdivision. So I thought, like anybody, if I lived in this neighborhood, I would not appreciate the commercial mixing of traffic.
And Councilmember Smotherman, Planning Commissioner Smotherman mentioned that typically connectivity is something that's
Oh, absolutely.
primary focus for us.
Yes.
From a precedent standpoint, if in the county, are you consistently doing what you're telling us that you would do in other instances?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So We work with the city staff on several annexation requests. They graciously ask our opinion on these requests, and we offer our opinion, and most times it's use the road in good health, you know, so we appreciate everything that the city staff has done to help keep the lines of communication open. So, but yes, we are consistent with this and any others.
And last thing, when you talk about, because you mentioned this to me, and I thought it was interesting, the condition of this road in comparison to other county roads from a
Yes, it
standard
does not even meet current county standards. We have 2 road sections, a curb and gutter with 2 11-foot lanes, and then a ditch section road with 2 10-foot lanes and 2 4-foot gravel shoulders. So it would be a stretch to be 17, 18 feet wide. So that's a substandard road right now, but the level of use and traffic, it hasn't deemed to be upgraded right now.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you again, Mr. Hughes, for being here. We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thanks for being here.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else want to speak on the annexation plan?
Robert P., 4047 Bivens Hill Road in Reedville, Tennessee, and I'm the current county commissioner over the area that's Yearwood and actually part of Rutherford also. I had originally planned just to speak during the zoning phase, but I wanted to let you guys know, just as Mike did, and he did a good job of explaining that. If you hadn't been over there, that's a very, very narrow avenue. I mean, it is substandard to our current roads too. And then two, of course, I represent the people in that area, and I've got numerous calls, people not wanting, you know, the excess traffic added into that area. And, you know, my concern when I saw, you know, that the annexation was up also was that you would be able to annex the roads. And of course, my understanding now is that you won't. So I've got a few questions about how that would actually work if you do annex this property. But I wanted to bring to your attention too, there's several folks that are here that'll probably speak during the annexation part, but they also have a petition, you know, asking to deny this, and they haven't shown it. I saw it a few minutes ago, but that's something you might want to look at now. If you do, I'm sure one of them would bring it up. But just so you're aware that the majority of the people in that neighborhood are resisting this. So thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner P., do any commercial vehicles travel this roadway today?
I would say somewhere from little to none. Probably if you see a few Amazon trucks run down through there just like you do everywhere. This is a very narrow road. I mean, if you went over there, I think you'd be surprised.
I passed a UPS truck on it today, is the reason I asked that question. I know the answer to it. But I'm curious as to why you would say that no commercial vehicles are traveling that roadway currently, because I know they do.
Well, if I said that, that was a mistake. What I'm saying is they don't want additional traffic added to there. You know, there's enough traffic as there is. You know, we've got gridlock all over our county, not just on Yearwood or where it meets different junctions. But these are people that are wanting to preserve their homes. So, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Commissioner P. Appreciate it. Anybody else want to speak on the annexation?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Richard Graham. I live at 2403 Central Boulevard. I'm about 35 feet from the edge of this property line on the north side, northeast corner. I had a couple of questions. But first, I'd like to present a petition to you tonight, and it reads as follows. This is a petition from property owners in the Yearwood and Central Boulevard area requesting you deny Greenland Partners their request for annexation 2019-515 and rezoning change 2019-442. This also includes approximately 650 foot of length of Yearwood Avenue that is only a 30-foot right-of-way and should never be subjected to any and all commercial traffic. Now, that last sentence right there, commercial traffic. Yes, there is a little commercial traffic. UPS goes up and down our street every day. Prime, Amazon, I see them. I see FedEx. And there is garbage pickup in the county. As far as any other commercial traffic, I know of any, none. I see quite a bit of the traffic. There's a lot of traffic that already cuts through, and there are a lot of probably college students that come through Central Boulevard going to college. There seems to be a lot of traffic off East Main Street cutting through to eliminate the light at the corner. But I have another question to what is your requirements of a planned commercial development? I don't know. Can somebody tell me what the requirements are to a planned commercial development?
Yes, sir, Mr. Graham. We'll take all the questions during the public hearing, and then we'll try to address all those at the end of the public hearing. Thank you.
But a lot of this has to do with we be able to come back and talk to you again about it after that?
Come back.
No, the public hearing would be closed by that point.
That's my question. Would we be able to address?
After we answer the questions?
Yes.
No, sir. You'll be able to come back up and speak again at the next public hearing.
Okay.
But not again at this public hearing.
Okay. I have several people in my neighborhood that may want to come up and say a word or two about it. But if this comes in, we're going to have to look at some type of a building. Every time we come out our doors, get in our cars, and drive down Yearwood Avenue, we're going to have to look at the back of something. And right now, it's a house. And I don't mind looking at houses. But commercial development, I think that we should never be able to subject it to have to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Graham. Anybody else want to speak on the annexation plan?
Hi, my name is Robert Womack. I live on Central Boulevard, 2410 Central Boulevard. Most of the comments or questions I have, I think would be more appropriate for the next public hearing. But one thing I did want to point out, Yearwood intersects with Main Street. It's very close to Rutherford there. And oftentimes when you're coming from town and headed east out that road, if you want to turn left onto Yearwood, the traffic already backs up there. And sometimes people back into that intersection, the intersection of Rutherford and East Main. Is that right? Y'all have a map in front of you. You understand what I'm saying? So if you come through that intersection and you want to make that a heavier use road, Yearwood, you're going to have an issue where traffic backs up into the intersection. I don't think that'd be appropriate, but that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mr. Lama? Anybody else? Okay. Close the public hearing on this item. And I'm going to briefly just talk about the requirements for a plan development.
Sure. So, planned commercial zoning, and the way I like to explain it is to people who may not be familiar with the term, it's plan-specific zoning. So in other words, if approved, the plan that the applicant submits, if it's adopted by the city council, becomes the zoning for the property. In other words, they're basically writing their own zoning for the property. And so in the future, if it's adopted, then the development and all future use of the development will have to comply with with that zoning, with the zoning plan that they've submitted, basically everything that's contained within that booklet. I did just want to briefly address, because we did get into the connectivity issue, and I was and I was trying to keep that separate during this zoning public hearing so as to kind of eliminate any confusion, but I do feel like it needs some additional discussion since it's been brought up. You know, the Planning Commission mentioned connectivity. We do try to encourage connectivity. We try to encourage multiple ways in and out of developments, not only from a public safety standpoint, but just from a general traffic distribution standpoint. And also, in this case, we thought it was important for this development to have access to a signalized intersection. And we'll go into the details of the development in our next public hearing, but it was our position that having access to Yearwood was important because it got traffic, left turners onto North Rutherford Boulevard who would be heading southbound on Rutherford Boulevard. It got them down to a signalized intersection so that they could make a more regulated left turn. Certainly understand the logic of and understand the point of view of Mr. Hughes and the road board, but that was our logic in requesting that access to provide for left turns at a signalized intersection. And we felt that that was the proposed access drive was to be a secondary access point to help disperse traffic, that it would not be handling all the traffic coming in and out of this site. And that by the annexation of that right-of-way, it would enable us to improve that roadway, or to require the developer to construct improvements on that roadway. That last point is neither here nor there, since we can't annex that right-of-way now. But that was our logic in requesting that connectivity. And I think we'll have some more comments about that during the presentation on zoning.
Okay.
I'll be happy to answer any questions about that, and Mr. Huddleston is in the audience as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Plowman.
So, this whole, so it's not gonna happen. And would that not have some merit with respects to the annexation vote, or?
No, I think the annexation vote is purely which jurisdiction it will go in, or which jurisdiction the property will be located in. And I think that with the next public hearing, we'll review the zoning plan on its merits. But right now, what we have before us is can we annex the property? Can we serve the property? Is it prudent to bring that property into the city's jurisdiction?
Okay.
And the way we structure our zoning ordinances, or the ordinances that adopt zoning requests, is that when there's a companion annexation request, the annexation does not go into effect until the zoning goes into effect.
I see.
So approving the annexation does not put anyone at risk for it coming into the city without the zoning also being approved.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Well, with the annexation being contingent on what we do on the zoning, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the annexation of it, and then we'll see how the zoning works out.
I'll second that motion.
Can I make one comment before
Yeah.
we vote? I just do want to point out too, because we've talked about the limited sewer access, that the planning services does call for each individual tenant to get will serve letters rather than the whole property. So that's the first time I've seen that, just so we're paying attention to that too.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is the applicant aware of what Mr. Martin just said?
The
Okay.
record state that Mr. Mulchin and Mr. Hazlett are
Okay.
nodding affirmatively.
Okay.
Good evening, Rob Molson, SEC. Yes, we are aware of this. This is a long, ongoing process for this property. We've had other development plans for this property in the past. When we brought this to the water department, they did say they needed to conduct a study. So last January, February, they conducted a study on the sewer lines. They knew this was one of the older lines in the city to find out what the capacity levels were on this on the sewer line. Upon that study being conducted and reviewed, Valerie and the water department came back and told us it would be looking at low-end users in regards to sewer capacity on this. So we are aware of that, and I'll go into more discussion about potential customer or clients or tenant users in regards to that low sewer capacity is what we're looking at in regards to this, this commercial center on that side being smaller type retail centers and stuff like that. So we are aware of that. And like you said, Mr. Martin, it is unusual, but this is kind of the situation we have where we have to ask for individual requests for will serve on each tenant in the space. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mulchin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if there are no other comments, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. We had a one. Okay. All right. Moving on to our next item is the zoning application for approximately 0.68 acres located along Yearwood Avenue and North Rutherford Boulevard to be rezoned from RS-15 to PCD, East Side Village PCD, and approximately 1.15 acres to be zoned PCD simultaneous with annexation. Greenland Partners LLC is the applicant. Ms. Kerr.
Thank you. This property is located at 213 and 219 Yearwood Drive. The property is located east of South Rutherford Boulevard and west of Yearwood Avenue and is north of East Main Street and Louise Street and south of Alumni Drive. The property is approximately 1.83 acres. A portion of the requested property along the western boundary is within the city and is zoned single-family residential district. The remainder of the property is zoned RM in the unincorporated county. The applicant wishes to rezone the property to planned commercial district. The proposed PCD would consist of one single-story, 11,000 square foot multi-tenant commercial center with a drive-through proposed at the north end of the building. Primary exterior materials would be brick, stone, and cementous siding. Setbacks for the development would be 42 foot on Rutherford Boulevard, 42 foot on Yearwood Avenue, and 10 foot on both sides. Amenities at this building complex would be 0.668 acres of usable open space with a formal space consisting of a plaza of pavers with some seating and benching areas. The proposed development would include a 15-foot Type D buffer along the northern, eastern, and southern boundaries adjacent to the Yearwood residential subdivision. The development is requesting to have direct access onto South Rutherford Boulevard via a single access point. Also, the request is being made for a secondary point of access on Yearwood Avenue to gain access to the signalized intersection to the south at East Main Street and South Rutherford Boulevard. If the applicant does not receive approval from the secondary access onto Yearwood, staff would request that the program book be revised to include a driveway stub to be located at the current location of the access along Yearwood Drive for future possible access. The surrounding properties to the north, east, and the south are zoned the county RM and are developed with a single-family residential subdivision, Yearwood. West of the property, directly across Northfield Boulevard, is the University Square PCD development, which is developed with a multi-tenant commercial building and a gas station. Further to the north of the property is owned by MTSU, which is owned CU for Colleges and University District, and developed with a parking lot. The future land use map of the 2035 Comprehensive Plan recommends that public institution is the most appropriate land use character for the subject property, as shown on the map that you have before you. Compatible existing zoning districts are CU, or college and university, and PND, planned institutional development. Examples of development types in the public institutional land use character include government buildings, hospitals, schools, and universities. Staff believes this recommendation was made in the future land use map due to the proximity of the property to MTSU. The proposed zoning is not consistent with the recommendations of the future land use map for this property. Because MTSU does not have ownership or control of the property, however, it may not be feasible to have developed in the manner recommended by the comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission will need to determine whether this is an appropriate instant to deviate from the recommendations of the future land use map. A revised copy of the program book has been handed out to you this evening, and the applicant, Rob Mulchin, is here to make a presentation regarding the proposed rezoning and to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kerr. Mr. Mulchan?
Good evening, everyone. Pull this up. All right. Good evening, everyone. Rob Mulchin, SEC, on behalf of Greenland Partners, I wanted to bring to you tonight our application for rezoning to a planned commercial district to bring along East Side Village. As you can see, the property, as we talked about, is located to the eastern side of North Rutherford Boulevard, to the west side of Yearwood Avenue. You can kind of see the proximity relationship to this property to MTSU. As you can see, Fraternity Row in the upper left-hand corner, and then all the athletic fields that are associated with the MTSU campus, and also the large parking field just up the road at Alumni Drive. And that's kind of the extent of the campus in regards to what we were talking about just a second ago in regards to the land use plan and the idea that this property was looked at as a land use plan as being part of the institutional characterization. You see the property itself, a little more zoomed in on there. The property is two pieces of property that we're pulling together into one property on that side. You can see directly across the street on the other side of North Rutherford, you have a Shell gas station and a retail strip center. And then we're bounded by them back on the Yearwood side of things as a residential character on that side. So we're more or less making a transition of residential character to commercial character to match the character of commercial on the other side of the roadway. And we talked about the zoning classification. You see this property as part of the annexation. We talked about this was bisected more or less down the property itself. So we're more or less trying to bring this all back into one contiguous zoning classification on these properties. Talked about the land use inside of that. You see a very broad brush stroke in regards to the public institutional side of things on this side. As you can see, like the earlier previous diagram showed, the commercial elements and apartment elements that are across the street are actually part of the overall public institution. Those were in place or in the process of being in place when the land use plan was presented. So it's kind of the same configuration. We feel that this property was looked at in regards to maybe being part of the MTSU establishment over time, but it has no controlling interest for MTSU to expand out to this portion. So we feel that this is an appropriate change in use in regards to land use and providing a commercial services to not only the students and faculty and staff of MTSU, but also the surrounding residential and or land users in this area. You know, a little like some character. This is the house on 2013, one of the properties on that side. This is a view from across the street at the Shell station looking back at the property across North Rutherford. And this is looking down Yearwood Avenue with our property 2019 on the right-hand side. This is some of the housing characteristics of the homes along Yearwood. This is a view from the gas station area on Rutherford looking south. You can see the divided median roadway. And this is looking north. This is at the intersection we're planning to add in the additional left-hand turn lane into the site. And this is a view of the retail center and gas station across the street. As you can see, the retail center is primarily EIFS facade, and the gas station is primarily brick facade with some EIFS on there. Moving into the plan, we're looking at proposing a one-unit building, one building on this property, roughly about 11,100 square feet. The northern side of this would have a drive-through tenant space on that side. Currently, my client is working with a local donut shop in regards to that tenant space being leased out potentially if this project would move forward on that side. So that would be the drive-through tenant on this property if that was the case to move forward with the project. Other tenants in this facility would be, small, like we talked about, in regards to low sewer capacity users. We're talking to an urgent care facility in regards to another tenant space on this on that end, and some other smaller retail or office type uses in this that would be very low capacity in regards to sewer capacity on that side as well. You can see the property itself. The main face of this building will be facing out to North Rutherford Boulevard. And then you're bounded on the northern and eastern side and southern sides by a Type D landscape buffer. This is the second largest buffer that we have in our zoning ordinance on that side. This is a 15-foot wide buffer. It'll have a double staggered row of evergreen trees for the length of that entire buffer that's shown on the plan. That will include not only 2 rows of 6-foot tall evergreen trees planted at the day we start, and it will also incorporate 3-foot tall evergreen shrubs to fill in the gaps between those trees until said time those trees get tall and full enough that they fully screen out everything on that side. So it's more or less a temporary gap to fill in the gaps between the trees on that side. You can see we got a few small detention areas. You can see on the southern end of the building, we included a loading zone. It was one of the things we discussed at length with staff in regards to the loading zone. We've incorporated that since we were at the workshop to provide that loading zone in regards to any of the small box trucks like UPS, FedEx, which would be our typical tenant type delivery vehicles on the side of this thing. Since this is a very small retail center, we don't anticipate any larger vehicles more than a smaller delivery box truck on that side. So we're not looking at any double axle type, tractor trailers or anything like this. This is a small retail facility that would, these being smaller, 3,000 square foot tenants, you're not going to have someone coming with a large tractor trailer to make a delivery, but we are incorporating a loading zone to handle any type of delivery traffic that may come and go to these tenants on that side. The remainder of the property is we will continue to have our landscaping as per the zoning ordinance along Rutherford there to create a very good soft feel along the front side of this on that side. So this is more or less the overall general plan for the development. Architecture, you can see here, this is an image of what we intend the building to look like. You can see here we'll go through a couple of the different elements in regards to that. We're providing a very strong base to this building with a dark brown brick appearance on that side, followed by a strong body, which is going to be more of a light tan brick above that with some banding strips across the face of the building on the corners and around the front side to help give some more architectural character to the building on that side. I'm looking at the incorporation of a dark bronze ephes to kind of accent the top of this to kind of give it a very strong cap to the overall building structure outside. And then, of course, we're going into some dark bronze storefront materials, which will be the windows and stuff like that along that side, along with some smoked tinted glass to help, give it a good feel along that side. And then also looking at incorporating some accent lighting along the facade to help continue to address that architectural character with some shepherd hook lighting fixtures incorporated in the overall style and character. This is, you can see this view, this is looking from the north end, looking down the building towards the south. You can see the drive-through location there on that northern side there. And again, here's just more of the architecture. This gives you what all 4 sides of this building look like. Of course, the one on the top is is your face that's facing North Rutherford on that side, so you can kind of see the overall retail character with the signage and such on that side. But again, coming around the back side, you can see the individual doors for tenant spaces. We'll have a small outdoor awning over top those doors to add some extra architectural characteristic. We've gone through and added some different brickwork on that to kind of do some accentuation along the back side of this building. And you can see the same thing as with the smaller elevations on the north and south side facing, especially with the giving some extra architectural character to the building on that. Access plan, as we talked about, our main access point that we anticipate for this project would be on the North Rutherford. There's already a 3-way intersection in regards to the retail center and gas station across the street with the divided median on Rutherford. With this project, we'll be adding in an additional left-hand turn lane off of North Rutherford into the site, just as there is one to the south side that accesses to the gas station and retail center across the street. So that's where our commitment to making this a good 4-way intersection for good access in and out of the property. And we talked about at length during the annexation about our proposed for our connection to this to Yearwood Avenue on that side. I know it's been some discussion that the County Road Board has denied the request for this to be annexed, but our intent is to petition for a driveway access connection to this with the County Road Board. There was no no application formally made by the applicant, but it was made by the city in regards to the annexation. We will make an application to see if we can access this with our own request on that side. So this would be our secondary access point, as we talked about, provides us with an opportunity to utilize Yearwood to get back to Main Street and also back to Louise Street to make other opportunities to get back to North Rutherford Boulevard as regards to other opportunities for making turns on North Rutherford, either north or south on that side. We'll talk a little about some of the amenities as we're required by the design guidelines to provide outdoor amenities on this side. We're looking at potentially, but this being the donut shop or whatever type of small retail, restaurant type of use that we'd be permitted to have out here based on the water department's request for serving on that. Looking at maybe like a small outdoor patio space with some tables and chairs to provide outdoor seating areas for these restaurant tenants on that side. And then also along here, we'd be providing some outdoor seating areas. So if there was like a small ice cream shop or something else that would be incorporated in this, we're providing some outdoor seating areas for patrons to sit down and relax outside. We'll also be incorporating along the front of the building, all that sidewalk space that you see leading from the parking spaces back to the doors as part of our formal open space program, providing either like a brick paver or some type of a colored and scored type of concrete system along that sidewalk. And again, we'll also be incorporating a spot for mail kiosks, as we know that those are important elements of any development nowadays, whether it's residential or commercial. I appreciate your time and consideration of this development, and I'm available for any questions now or after the public hearing. Thank you.
No questions for Mr. Melchan?
I got one. So I don't see, and I should have asked this anyway, I don't see a ordering kiosk. I'm assuming that there's not going to be one with respects to this.
There will be an ordering kiosk. If there is one for the tenant that comes on board that has an ordering kiosk, now there are some tenants that don't have ordering kiosks.
Right.
If they are, they would be on that back side of the building like they traditionally are along the, where that sidewalk area is. So they'll be put in back there. So as those cars are lined up along the back side of the building, in that landscaping area between the back of the building and the drive aisle, you'd have your typical kind of signage in that location back there.
And Mr. Melchan, I was just wondering, seemed like the images you were showing us tonight might have been different or maybe newer versions of what we're looking at in the.
Yes, I apologize. We were working diligently since the workshop to get us back some architecture on that side. The elevations you guys have not provided or have not been provided to you tonight. I apologize for that. The elevations you see in the book versus what you see on the screen tonight are a little bit different in regards to the appearance and maybe some of the colors that you've seen on there. But what you've seen in the presentation, I apologize for not having a newer, updated versions for you to look at tonight and be in hand on that side.
That's okay, as long as that they would then be, what we saw tonight would become a part of the book. And
Yes, I think the overall character between the two, the overall character between what you see in the book and what I've shown tonight in the presentation are pretty much the same, except for a few little tweaks here and there.
Can you go back to the images, because I was
Sure.
looking at the book.
I think the major changes that you can see between what's on the screen in front of you and what's on the pages pages in front of you is the fact that, if I can bring that back up, there we go. On the ends of the buildings themselves, we've done a little more articulation with the brickwork to give some more character to it. So on the north and south end of the building where the drive-through is and the other end of the building, gone through and added a little more brick articulation to add some more unique architectural interest to the building, so it's not just a blank wall. Kind of brought that brick element up to create some pizzazz, I guess we want to call it like that, on that side to add a little extra flavor to the building on that side. Along the front of the building itself, not much change between what's in the book and what you see on the screen tonight. I think the back side of the building is also one of the major areas that we changed in that. We kind of, like I said, like we did on the ends, we've accented the doorways with a brick pattern around it to kind of add some more feature characterization, more character around those features to create that back having a little more architectural character versus just being a blank wall.
And Mr. Mulcham was working diligently with Ms. Kerr up until yesterday or today on these, I believe.
So can you talk a little bit to the gentleman's request? So he was talking about previously they looked at houses. Now they're going to be looking at a building, but with this shield, will they actually be able to see the building at all?
In the initial stages, yes, you'll be able to see the building, but as time goes and these screens grow up, we do pick evergreen trees that do grow rather quickly in buffers. That's what the city really asks for us to, pick unique species that grow quickly. So the first few years, while the trees are starting their growth stage, they will be planted at 6 foot high, but they will grow in the next 5 to 10 years within that area where they will start screening the actual back, the back side of this building from the neighborhood next door.
And can I ask another question just about, you have an example of pavers and then an example of decorative scored concrete. So is the decorative scored concrete what goes around the one side and the back of the building?
No, this is just along the front side of the building. We're required by ordinance to provide a certain square footage of formal open space on projects of a smaller caliber size acreage. So what we're doing is we're trying to provide a more formal experience along the front side for patrons that are coming to these shops or, businesses in this facility.
So are there going to be pavers and scored concrete? Is that
It's an option. That's what we're just saying, that in regards to meeting the formal characterization of what we're allowed to have. Those are just some of the characters we could have inside that paving system along the front side. You can have, they want it to be an enhanced type of pavement system, so either using brick pavers or a colored scored concrete or a stamped concrete. Those are different types of, paving materials that the ordinance, the design guidelines calls for in regards to pavement types to be used in a formal open space.
Well, I was just thinking that just in general, I realize it looks like that according to whatever you're required to have for formal open space, you've got the little 4 patio area with 4 tables down at the one end by the drive-through, and then looks like 2 benches out in front. Seemed a little, minimalist on the formal open space. But also, if we're not going to have pavers, I think there's a huge difference in the look of pavers and the look of scored concrete. So if those are interchangeable,
We can definitely make it. If this is your request, we can definitely just move it straight to pavers and move it to that direction. Like I said, these are just options that we're permitted to utilize. But if you feel like it's more of an advantageous characterization to make this feel more formal, we can definitely just make it purely just pavers along the front side.
I guess I just think in general, if I'm shown pavers in the book, I'm thinking I'm going to see pavers.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I think we're indifferent from design character, so we're good with just removing the one and just making sure, solely pavers.
that's just a general comment.
We can make it happen.
Any other comments before we open the public hearing? Questions? Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you all.
Melton. All right, we will open the public hearing and ask everyone to come forward that would like to speak. And even if you've spoken before, when you come to the podium, please state your name and your address. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, members, my name is Susan Pinkerton Woolsey, and I live at 1602 North Highland Avenue in Murfreesboro. And 218 Yearwood Avenue is my family home. It's owned by my father, my husband, and myself. And my parents bought this house in 1966. It wasn't shown in any of the photographs that they were showing of the pictures on Yearwood Avenue. Neither was Mr. Graham's house, which is across the street, across Central Boulevard from our house. My dad's house is on the corner of Yearwood and Central. And my dad is 85 years old. He spent the last 54 years in that house. He lives there by himself. I'm concerned about my dad's quality of life for the rest of his life. And when they built Rutherford Boulevard through there, that was a really big thing for everyone. You know, the noise, the amount of noise changed. There's lots of traffic noise. And now to put a development basically right across the street from our mailbox and, you know, our driveway and, you know, where my dad's been all these years. And he lives by himself. He's a functioning 85-year-old. I'm very proud of him for that. But this is a 75-plus-year-old neighborhood. And there are still a lot of families there. And yes, some commercial traffic. I'm sure Amazon goes everywhere in the county. Amazon and FedEx, they all deliver. But that's about all that there is, except for, you know, maybe the private garbage pickup. I'm concerned about the buffer. You know, to look out, like I said, he didn't show my house or our house, and he didn't show Mr. Graham's house, and those are two properties that are facing directly toward this property. The one small house, the cottage-type house that will be, it looks like it'll be right across the street from where they want the access point. The young lady has come in and she's bought that house and she's done major renovations to it. And it's a cute little house now. But it is a narrow street. Kids still ride their bikes on it. You know, because there are children in the neighborhood still. There are still elderly people in the neighborhood. People walk around the block, you know, for exercise. My dad will get out and walk around the block. It's in Oakwood Heights. That's not a very common name that people know about, but it's Oakwood Heights subdivision. It's, I don't know, quality of life. And I just want to make sure that the Grahams, Richard's family has lived on those same two plots of land since, I think he said 1942. I know they built the house, the brick house across the street in 1956. Isn't that, Richard? And my parents' house was built, I think, in 57, and we bought it, like I said, in 66. But we're just concerned, you know. Yeah, his family's been there 63 years or plus. But, you know, I am concerned about the buffer. You know, if there was a fence, a high fence around the entire property without access to Yearwood, that would make me feel better, because the bushes and the evergreens would be great, but people can still go through those, you know, people walking through those. And if there's traffic driving behind that building, you know, that's just adding more noise into the quiet little neighborhood. It was a quiet little place to grow up. And anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your consideration.
Good night.
Good evening. Kenneth Haynes, 214 Yearwood Avenue. I just want to address, similar to the last lady up here, the barrier. I do not believe that a tree barrier is adequate to keep the quality of life the same in this very established community. What I do believe is appropriate would be more of a structural wall, something that would block headlights going through a drive-through, which I think we know will end up being very busy. As an alumnus of MTSU and former employee, I've been around this area my whole life. And I know that it's going to get a lot of business if this zoning application is approved. But that doesn't mean we should sacrifice the quality of life in this neighborhood. So I believe that a landscape barrier is not adequate. And I also believe that 5 to 10 years is quite a long time to wait for that to grow up. But even at its full growth, I don't believe that that would block all of the headlight shining through. I also do not believe that it would block sound, as well as some stronger structural barrier that could potentially preserve the quality of life. And you know, 214 was pictured up here, and it will be very much affected by the traffic going through this establishment. And I do believe that that should be considered as an alternative instead of a landscape barrier.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Judy Hughes. I live at 2416 Central Boulevard. And yes, it is considered an older neighborhood, but thanks to my father and mother, they are the original builders in the neighborhood. My father worked in the evenings at Carnation Milk Plant and hauled coal cinders to build the road. We were the first house in the neighborhood. I have lived there all my life, other than for 10 years when I lived in Nashville. I still live in the house. My father built it, his father, and a couple of my uncles. 3 other houses on Central Boulevard and down Juliet were also built by my family. It is a mix of elderly and young people because we are having new families move in with kids, a lot of walking, and I am totally against any of this being transpired in our neighborhood. It takes away our lifestyle, it takes away our security, takes away the calmness and serene quietness of our neighborhood. They need to go elsewhere with their plans and not bring it into this area of the city. Even though we're still in the county, we do not want it, and I oppose it completely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Mike Hughes, Rutherford County Engineer again. Don't want to be the bad guy, but I had a few recommendations. The subdivision that the subject property is in is actually called Yearwood Annexation. It's from the 1930s. The setbacks that were shown on one of the exhibits, I think in the pattern book, showed a 40-foot setback. They're more like 20 or 25 foot. It's a really old subdivision. The houses are really close to the road. It's only a 40-foot right-of-way through there. So what the gentleman had said, screening, if you're going to have a drive-through. In my previous life as a design engineer for SEC back in the day, when we designed the Dairy Queen on Cason Lane, there's a solid wall through there and landscaping through there. So knowing that headlights would be circling the Dairy Queen all hours of the day and night, they thought the planning department thought it best to add that visual barrier to protect the residents at, I believe it's Stone Trace subdivision. It could be a different name, but it's right next door. You have houses, so that I would recommend a fence in addition to the landscaping. The rear elevation, I really like that. On another project, Alexander Square, just down the street, where Nacho's restaurant is located. Even though I had nothing to do with architectural design, as a civil engineer, I was embarrassed the way the back of the building looked because it faced, the back of the building was visible from John Bragg Highway and Rutherford Boulevard. And it was an ugly building with all kinds of utilities. You could see the air conditioning units on top of the building. So this is a great improvement over that. The new gas station at the corner of John Bragg blocks the ugliness of that Alexander Square, so I appreciate them doing that. The other issue I would have would be the order kiosk on that residential side. You'll have a squawk box there, you know, with speakers, which will, you know, impact the quality of life, which the people had mentioned. But a visual screen, a visual wall would help lessen that noise. I don't know if you could move it to the north end of the building or something, but we had to do that at the Dairy Queen. We had to rotate it away from the residential houses off of Cason Lane. Access points, we in the county also love access points, but again, we feel that mixing the commercial traffic with the residential traffic is a bad idea, and we don't want to impact the subdivision with the additional commercial traffic. The road board took two actions on their meeting dealing with this annexation request. They made a recommendation to deny the annexation of Yearwood, which was mentioned, but they also mentioned not to allow a driveway connection onto Yearwood. So I know property will eventually transition. Commercial developments do belong on major arterials like this, but I think the timing right now, mixing commercial and residential traffic together is a bad idea. I mean, eventually down the road, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, this area could transition and it might all become commercial, who knows? So, but right now, we just feel that mixing the commercial and the residential traffic is a bad idea. So if you could add a solid visual barrier to help with the headlights circling the building all the time, and then do something, maybe if you can muffle the noise from the order kiosk, that would be greatly appreciated by the residents. So, thank you.
Thanks again, we appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Melanie Haynes. 214 Yearwood Avenue is the address that, it is actually directly across the street from 213, which is the said address that we've been discussing here tonight. I'm not sure that it is adequate just to have the evergreen trees there as a barrier. I feel like that if this is a project that's going to go through, it would be nice to have some type of a retaining wall there that could take care of sound, also headlights. The property that we own there is going to see a lot of that because it is directly across from 213 to 219, the area that you've been discussing. Just wanted to say that. I know it's been said several times, but I just kind of needed to reiterate that, the way I feel about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Robert Womack. I live at 2410 Central Boulevard. And one of the houses her father built, I guess. I just learned that just now. But most of what I had to say has already been said. The neighborhood really is an older neighborhood that a lot of people have kind of forgotten about because it's been there so long. So it really is kind of an oasis. And what's really cool about the neighborhood is it's very quiet. It's a great place for kids, but it's also very close to town, right? So that's what I really like about it. So any kind of traffic or new lights or new noise would definitely alter the environment of the neighborhood, the vibe of the neighborhood, and it definitely affect our quality of life. The only other two things I wanted to add, as far as the commercial traffic, if we did allow an access from Yearwood, they said, okay, it would only be UPS or small box trucks. But if they're going to have restaurants there, they're going to be Coke trucks making deliveries, also beer trucks. Those are tractor trailer type trucks. And that would absolutely change. I don't know how they would get those trucks up and down Yearwood. I guess you're talking about updating it to meet city standards. But presently, that road is used for the people who live there. They walk, their kids ride their bikes through there. It is a very residential place. And the other thing, I wanted to bring it up again because when the spotlights come on, you get kind of nervous, and it's hard to make your point up here, I promise you. But that Yearwood is very, very close to the intersection of Rutherford and East Main. And there's presently a tattoo parlor there. But the traffic, if you're going to be bringing those trucks in to turn left onto Yearwood to go into the back of this development, there's a turning lane to go to go left onto Rutherford. I guess that would be south onto Rutherford. And they're going to be sitting here, one waiting to go left and the other waiting to go left. You see what I mean? And it backs the traffic up into that. It's going to cause a big problem. So my main thing would be to please don't allow access to this development from Yearwood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Womack.
Robert P., 4047 Bivens Hill Road, Reedville, Tennessee. Y'all need to come out sometime and visit. At night, it's really dark out there. When you get down to Rutherford Boulevard, and I want you to notice this spring when you're driving through there, probably a week to 3 weeks before all the other trees in Rutherford County are blooming out and blossoming, you'll see that they're blooming out through there because of the excess light. Now, I call that light pollution myself, so I like to look up and see the stars at night. And I realize you're in a neighborhood that's adjacent to the city limits there, but I'd like to ask each one of you to think about it for just a minute or two. I don't know where you live, but imagine we were trying to do this over on Haynes Drive, and we wanted to put this commercial building on the street off the main drag through Haynes Drive there. I think you'd have a few people jumping up and down and yelling, we really don't want this in our residential neighborhood. And I don't think you would want it in your residential neighborhood either. We're talking about quality of life. You know, I mentioned light pollution because that's kind of a thing for me because I like to get out at night and look at the stars. But there's also a lot of noise pollution. Of course, if you've got a box where you're able to drive up and order something, that's going to be a lot of noise. If you were sitting back 100 yards, and these guys are a lot closer than that, the noise would be there for whatever the hours of operation would be. But that'd certainly be an annoyance at the least. Maybe you'd get used to it after a while or get yourself a good set of earplugs. The other thing I want to mention too is, have y'all talked to MTSU? What is their plans? Do you know if they want to go out that way? I know I hear people in different parts of the town saying, hey, MTSU is wanting this area. And two, the fact that you're actually going to have to go outside of your long-range plan to make this work. I think maybe you need to rethink this. The residents I represent over there certainly don't want it, and I'd like for y'all to give them every consideration. Two, if you do decide to do this, I think Mr. Hughes had some excellent recommendations. I don't think that a solid wall to cut down the lights, to cut down some of this noise pollution, and it's not just the loudness, a lot of times it's the frequency. I don't know how many of you have heard a whining fan on a commercial air unit kick on and off in the middle of the night, but it'll jar you out of your bed. So, thank you.
Thank you again, Commissioner Bee. Anybody else? Close the public hearing. And we will ask for comments, questions, and anything you'd like to address that was stated tonight.
I believe the biggest issue is a possibility of a solid wall. I believe I would like to have applicant speak to that?
As part of the ordinance and the zoning allows for us to incorporate a wall and a type D buffer, we are willing to make that commitment to putting up a 6-foot-tall PVC fence. It would not be a plain white fence, it'd be a decorative fence, rather like some kind of, beige or taupe. They even make a PVC fence that's also has a wood character to it as well. So we definitely would be open to go ahead and including the 6-foot-tall PVC fence that's part of the option for a type D buffer on the plan. So we are open to that. We understand the issues in regards to with this being a drive-through and, whether that's a donut shop initially on that side, which would operate from early morning hours till roughly about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like most donut shops, especially a locally owned donut shop, usually closes down pretty early in the day. So we're not talking about nighttime traffic on a donut shop if that's potentially who our first user is in this drive-through facility on that side, so you're talking early mornings. But we're open to looking at incorporating a 6-foot-tall PVC fence along the Yearwood side of this buffer. That would be along the roadway side of Yearwood, which is closest to all the neighbors in regards to this property on that side, so we're definitely open to this. I think if you also look at your book in regards to some distance separations, we did provide some cross-sections to show some of the different distance separations on page 19 and 20. Kind of gives you some distances in regards to the back of this building in relationship to the fronts of the homes near our property on that side to kind of show you what our distance is. You can see between us and 214, the back corner of our property would be roughly almost 141 feet or so from the front of the home next door. That would be that much distance plus our buffer, which if we are now going to go ahead and installing our 6-foot fence, it's a pretty good distance between a commercial structure as a residential structure on that side. And as you go further north with our building, moving further away from Yearwood, and the homes along Yearwood, we're now up to about 165 feet from 218 Yearwood to the back of our building on that side. So we're definitely in agreement with making a fence structure along the Yearwood Avenue side, and that would not include the north and south sides of our buffer. That would still be a double staggered row of evergreen trees, but the frontage along Yearwood Avenue would incorporate that 6-foot fence to shield our neighbors across the street from any headlights and or traffic noise that would be generated by our cars going through the facility during the operational hours on that side.
So just for clarity, that's the 6-foot fence in addition to the evergreens?
The option in regards to the type D buffer, and as you get to put in the fence, but you get a 50% reduction in plant material, but the plant material will be put to the outside or your neighbor's side of the fence. So the bare side of the fence would be on our property side facing the back of the building, a fence, and then a single row of evergreen trees along the outside face facing out towards Yearwood on that side.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Mr. Russell, I did just want to mention, and this would be at the discretion of the Planning Commission, Mr. Mulchan is offering to use one of our standard options for a type D buffer in the zoning ordinance where the fence is used to substitute for some of the plantings. So it would be at your discretion if you chose to require the fence to make it in addition to the plantings that would be in a type D buffer, or to or what Mr. Mulchan is offering for it to substitute for some of the plantings in a type D buffer. So I think that you would need to be clear in your direction to him whether or not that fence would be in addition to a standard type D buffer plantings or as a part of a type D buffer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew, you talked about, even though the road board has denied the request for annexation or access to Yearwood, we all understand that, but you talked about having a cut out or whatever with opportunity if that ever changes. I'm assuming though that we would still want this fence to go beyond this cut through. Are we saying that the plantings would also be there, or you follow what I'm trying to say here?
I do follow what you're saying, and Mr. Halliburton, just to kind of preface that, to respond to the action of the road board with regards to access to Yearwood Avenue with it remaining a county road. The vote that they took was to deny access. However, it was not in response to a specific application for access. It was a vote after the request to consent to annex. So it was kind of a vote to emphasize the fact that they they were not in favor of that access point. However, there was no formal request for access before them. So what Mr. Hazlett and SEC are in the process of doing is putting together a formal request to the Highway Department for access onto Yearwood Avenue as a part of this plan. And should that request be denied, then we will have clearer direction to a specific request as opposed to the vote that was taken on Monday morning. And so, but even if that is the request, we still do feel that that's an important connection. And should the county change its mind in the future and agree that that is an appropriate connection, we want to have the ability to make that connection. And so what we were asking is that they stub a driveway to the property line, not make the connection to the roadway, but stub it to the property line. And there could be type 3 barricades placed at the end of that driveway until such time, if it ever occurs, that connection is allowed to be made. As far as would the buffer go across that driveway, we would not typically require that buffer to go across a proposed driveway. Especially, I think it's also important to know that people who live within walking distance of this center, if it's approved and built, will want to provide a pedestrian way for the people who are using the center, which the uses that are proposed in the pattern book are neighborhood commercial uses intended to serve this neighborhood and people traveling along Rutherford Boulevard. And so we would want a pedestrian way, and so keeping that gap in the buffer would enable there to be a pedestrian way into the site as well.
Matthew, I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of going the other direction. Now, originally, when we talked about this in our first meeting, I was visualizing the street with sidewalks, Yearwood with sidewalks, and the street being widened and a much more pedestrian-friendly type roadway. After traveling the road today, I'm not sure that there's room enough for a standard roadway on Yearwood and sidewalks without being on their front porch. And so I do think that, although from a safety standpoint of trying to get traffic in and out safely, I think that I understand where we were coming from, because that was part of my vision. If we're not going to use Yearwood, then I look at it as Yearwood being the, I would really rather us just eliminate any relationship between this property and what goes on Yearwood, which means the complete fence all the way across the back of the property. And truthfully, I personally would like to see chain link fence up the sides of the property to the stub streets on the side of this property. And the reason I say that is because if you just imagine what it's going to be like on the back side of this building with these stacking lanes, and if there was a crime that were to take place, then Yearwood would be the place that I would run to if I were the criminal trying to get away. And so I would rather go ahead and surround the property and make the property completely stand alone and separate from the neighborhood as much as we possibly can from the safety standpoint of, as Ms. Pinkerton pointed out, I mean, her father lives over there, and I don't want people with bad motives to be cutting back towards his property when they're trying to leave this property if they've done something wrong back there. And I hope it's extremely well lighted, and I'm not saying a lighting plan here, and there may be one, I'm just overlooking it, but I'm concerned about stacking traffic along the backside of a building that may or may not be a very high traffic area. And originally I was seeing Yearwood being developed with sidewalks and a major roadway across there. If that's not going to happen, then I would rather us go ahead and make this property isolated so that it's protected, that anything that happens on this property would have to go back towards Northville Boulevard. And I think to Mr. P's comments, With directional lighting the way it is today, you can pretty much draw a line with where the light goes. I mean, there won't be light pollution on this property if the lighting design is engineered properly. But I do agree that a solid fence or a solid wall of some type is the appropriate thing to do. But I would do it all the way across. And if someone who lives on Yearwood wants to use one of these businesses, then they need to go around the block just like anyone else would and access these properties. But I just think that there's no halfway to do this. You're either going to do it or you're not. And you know, what happens 25 years from now, I have no control over. I'm only responsible for what happens today. But I think today the real solution to the problem of protecting the neighborhood from the businesses and protecting the businesses from what could leave the property back into the neighborhood, I think that it's advantageous from both perspectives to not have any relationship with each other, and the only way to do that would be with a solid buffer across the back and chain link across the end with a single row of evergreens along there, so that, because we don't know what's going to happen to the north side, and we really don't know what's going to happen to the south side and how long it's going to be before anything happens. So I think to just isolate the property and say this is what it's going to be used for, I think that's acceptable. But if there's, I don't think there's a gray area. It's either black or it's white in this situation. And so, Rob, I'll let you respond to my comments.
Yes, Commissioner Smothern. I think my client and I are in agreement either direction, whether it's from the standpoint of the city wanting to have its typical connectivity to adjacent properties and adjacent streets. I mean, I went through this, about 12 months ago with a residential subdivision that wanted to tie into a county subdivision, and the neighbors came out and said they didn't want it, but that was a different situation in regards to where there was a stub street provided to the end of the property. This being that we don't actually have a physical connection or opportunity to make a physical connection to a right-of-way, which the county does not want us to make this point in time, we're open to either direction. And I think I agree with both parties' points of view, whether it's from the planning side of providing connectivity to allow for access down to Main Street to make a left and right out at the lights down there, or to Louise to make an opportunity for another turn on to North Rutherford. We're indifferent in either direction. And I do agree with the opportunity providing a 6-foot tall fence with a single row of evergreen trees along the outside. If the city or this body wants us to at least provide a stub to the property line, my client's open to the idea of we not knowing when that time frame is to providing that fence and tree line down that portion of that roadway with the known opportunity that if that right-of-way ever became city and the city wanted to make that connectivity, we'd be open to it. And I think from being a good neighbor standpoint, we're wanting to go ahead and move in either direction. We could still show a stub, in regards to the plan that we have here, the stub just stops at the curb line where more or less where you turn to go around the backside of the building. We just curb that off, put in the buffer and the fence, and we just close it off for now. If that opportunity ever comes down the road, we come back for a plan amendment at site plan level. If this plan was ever approved, come back at a site plan level later in the day, whenever the county and our city want us to make a connection, we can come back and just, all we do is tear down the fence, cut out some trees, and we move on.
Right.
So I think
And
we're
would
open.
it be advantageous to go ahead and leave that stub there and just run those trees north to south along Yearwood so that it's a straight line down through there? And that creates you 2 more unloading spaces there if you want 2 more parking spaces or places to unload.
You can see the jog and the evergreen trees you see there from the diagonalness of that leading back to the access drive is for visual.
Right, but there's no need for that.
So if we're not having a drive there, we can technically move those all the way back up to the property line and just give ourselves more usable land on our side for more parking, more whatever it might be that we need to do on the property. So, like I said, my client is open to doing whichever way you guys want.
To me, that sounds like a win-win.
Yeah.
I mean,
and to kind of go through, like you said, in regards to the property to the north, it's a vacant piece of property. We have no party in that. My client does have party in the properties to the south of this property. So we do show stub drives to the north and south to provide connectivity to adjacent parcels, which would then, at some point in time, if developed, would potentially have connectivity back to North Rutherford. So you're now providing a northerly connection back up to North Rutherford for more turning opportunities on the Rutherford. Granted, it is a divided roadway, so it would be a right turn only potentially, unless there was a change to the median based on the type of development occurring on 303 and the properties to the north. And the same thing with the properties in the south. I mean, if you're going to the south, you're going to have a stub street that allows for connectivity back across those properties to Louise, and also opportunities to get back on the North Rutherford again through an entrance off of Rutherford to those properties to the south. So there are future connection points for opportunities for vehicular movement around this property that won't necessarily need to include Yearwood Avenue. So I think we're good with closing it off and just being a good neighbor.
Well, the same thing is happening across the street from this property that would be happening on this property as far as traffic coming in and out of the roadway and crossing the roadway to get to the other side. From a safety standpoint, it's not a two-lane road in front of it, so that if there's an accident on it, that the roadway's blocked, because you can always use the other side of the road if you have to for emergency vehicles. So from a safety standpoint, which sometimes we chase after when we've got two-lane roads or something and we want access points, I think this is kind of different because of the roadway that's in front of it. It can carry the volume and has the ability to handle if there were an accident or something on the roadway. It doesn't block the entire access to the property. So I think there's an opportunity there that says maybe it's not as important. To Ms. Pinkerton's point, I don't want anybody's headlights going into her or anybody's property on Yearwood. Would you agree to the PVC fence or the wood appearing fence across the back of the property? And I think you've agreed to that. Would you also agree to the chain link up to on the sides of the property?
I think in regards to the fact that my client owns the property to the south, he's already got some idea about what he wants to do on the south side, that he's, he being the owner of that land and looking to develop that land, I don't think he was interested in providing that protectivity to his property to the south. But to the north side, we'd definitely be incorporating a 6-foot tall chain link fence along with the buffer. That would give a level of security in regards to those properties that, are not associated with my client.
Smotherman, I want to ask about the chain link fence and the precedent that might be set with putting chain link fence up around any future commercial properties that happen to be near a residential area. Have we done that a lot in the past? And we have.
And one example is a project that's under construction right now on Northfield Boulevard, where they're doing a warehouse behind Georgetown. And we required them to run the chain link fence all the way up to Northfield in order to prevent commercial people using the warehouse area to access that point over onto that property. So it's not a precedent. It's not something that we haven't done before.
But I would say we have a lot of developments where we haven't done it either. Chain link is not the most appealing.
I'm talking about the black chain link. I'm not talking about.
It would need to be coated.
Yeah.
Coated.
Yeah. I'm not talking about just a aluminum chain link.
Or
fence.
aluminum.
Yeah. But it's black painted or black coated.
It's black coated.
Yeah.
I share Jennifer's concern about that. I mean, I'm not sure I would want to lock the property down with the chain link fence. I know there's some precedent for that, but, other thing I think we should at least consider is that, there's a portion of Yearwood that is already annexed into the city. And so, the portion that runs from Louise Street to East Main Street, that property is already annexed. The road is already annexed into the city. So it's not like Yearwood is totally off limits from an annexation standpoint. The other point is, and I appreciate the folks from the community coming, but there are a lot more residents that live on Yearwood Avenue that are renters than are owners in that instance. And so from the standpoint of when the property will redevelop, I think what you're seeing is it redeveloping now, and probably will continue to do that based on the fact that investors own a lot of those properties and will look to redevelop that property over time. And the developer, as we've talked about, owns some of these properties to the south. With that southern portion of that property, when you start talking about future planning to exit onto North Rutherford or to exit onto Louise Street, it seems like we're going to be faced with the exact same situation of talking about, are we going to direct all the traffic up through that single entrance northbound onto Rutherford? So I think while on the surface what we're talking about today may not be a huge issue. If the property to the south is developed, it's going to be a bigger issue. We're going to be asking the same question again related to, do we need access onto Yearwood? And, can we access the street? So those are just points to be made. One other thing too, while I'm thinking about it, the other thing that I think is important to think about for the residents in this community is you've got Juliet Avenue as well as Twin Oak Drive that are all access points to East Main Street. So it's not like we're funneling all of the neighborhood traffic down Yearwood. So there are many other connecting points outside the neighborhood.
I would guess if the property's developed further south, that the precedent would already be set here as far as the fencing and the landscaping, that would be continued down the road. So, and I would think you just move the chain link fence further south if that were the case, unless it goes all the way to a roadway.
Well, the difference would be it's already annexed into the city, so you
Right.
they wouldn't have to ax the neighborhood. They could just.
What's it zoned?
The property in question?
Yeah.
No,
The property to the south. It's
Oh.
residential still, isn't it?
I believe it's zoned RM in the county.
It's county RM. So if and when my client ever brings the properties to the south, we'll be back through this body and city council for annexation request as well.
So he's not talking about chain link there anyway, so it's not like you'd move it.
Well, I want the chain link there is what I'm saying, but, and if the property were to be developed to the south of it, then you just take that chain link fence and move it further south. As long as a boundary, trying to funnel any traffic that's on this property away from that residential area is what I'm trying to do, to push it back towards Northville or Rutherford Boulevard.
Understand?
And if the planning commission were to decide that they wanted the PVC fence on both the north and the south border,
You could put a stub
is
there.
that acceptable to?
Because that's signalized.
Since we're looking at all of our options up here, and it sounds like we may have some divided opinions on that.
I think my client's
No, it's not.
view of this would be to do the PVC along Yearwood, where we're protecting the visual and/or noise abatement type of issues that would come from vehicles, either headlights or noise coming from those vehicles back towards our, neighbors on the Yearwood side of things. The north and south sides, with the north side being a vacant property at this point in time, whether that is redeveloped as a residential structure or somebody comes by and invests in it and buys into that. The other thing we have to be reminded of is all these properties over here are served by the same sewer. So all these properties, if they are to be redeveloped, we're going to have low-end users to utilize that sewer. So, because we've looked at this property from a larger standpoint in regards to talking to MTSU about a project that failed because there's not enough sewer capacity out there. So the property to the north, if it would progress, is going to have more limited capacity in regards to sewer, as much as the properties that my client has to the south. We're all limited to the same amount of sewer capacity that's flowing through to get to Louise Street. And at that point in time, we only have so much X amount of use that we can get across all these properties on this portion of Yearwood that face onto Northfield, on North Rutherford on that side. So those redevelopment opportunities are there, but they're going to be limited as much as we're limited by the amount of types of uses we can put in this structure. The properties to the north, we don't, I don't think, I don't know what type of uses could be done there. I think we're open to the idea of doing the PVC to abate visual and/or sound noises to the neighbors along Yearwood, to the north being vacant property, and to the south, my client's property. We're good with just staying with the chain link fence at this point in time to, from a security standpoint, provide that opportunity that if there is some kind of security issue, as Mr. Smotherman talked about, funneling that back towards Rutherford versus it moving towards the neighbors on the Yearwood side of things. So we're open to PVC on doing the, along Yearwood Avenue, and then, chain link on the north and south sides.
North and south sides.
Yes. As Mr. Smotherman talked about, if, as my client potentially develops the property to the south, we can remove that fence and move on.
And I think we also need to discuss or hear some opinion on whether the fence would be in addition to the current buffer that is shown here, or would we allow the fence to replace one of the rows of evergreens?
And if I can
The
speak,
major reason for the density on the vegetation was to try and block some of the light, but the fence is going to take care of the light. So-
correct,
And there is no north-south light issue.
right. So that's kind of the fact of why they provide this opportunity. The city provides this opportunity in the ordinance to have an option B is a better word for it in the ordinance, is that putting the fence in does more work than typically with your double row or staggered row of trees is going to do on the onset. So it's like our neighbors have pointed out, a double row of trees is great later on, but today, when the business is established, that fence is going to do a lot more than a double row of trees. So that's why they provide that opportunity for circumstances like this, or you have a different type of use that needs something more than what we need, to provide that opportunity just to replace one row of that tree with the fence and then put the landscape on the outside so it makes more beautification to that fence along the neighbor's side of things.
I would agree that it should be a part of, not in addition to.
Yeah.
So,
I agree as well, and I just
Yeah.
want to state again that I'm not in favor of chain link fence. in
and I agree with Jennifer as
buildings.
well.
I don't think that's, anodized or black coated, I don't think it's appealing, and I don't think it's, and we've got commercial up against residential all over the place, and you don't see that in general.
And I think you could make the argument that if we're trying to protect something from, bad circumstances, we could always make the excuse that we're trying to protect something from bad circumstances. So,
I mean, there's an example of out by Joe B. Jackson where we required the guy to build an 8-foot brick wall, which he refers to as the Smotherman Wall because I was kind of one of the people who pushed it. But but we required him to do that in order to have his project approved. So I mean, to say that we don't, and the fence is not there so much to protect the property as far as I'm concerned, it's to protect the residents around it. And it's to push anything that happens on this property back out to Rutherford Boulevard and not go back into the neighborhood, because I know there's places where Alumni Drive goes around Rutherford Boulevard, or the Rutherford parking lot that MTSU has on the opposite side from the campus. And there's places in the vegetation there where you can look across and see Yearwood. I mean, but it's not a really great buffer, and it's not a very good fence. But I mean, it's an old farm fence, and it's just rough vegetation, whatever has grown there, brush basically. But and it works okay in the summertime, but in the wintertime it doesn't work at all. But if we're going to put a wall across the back of it, then basically you're going to, if you don't put fences on the end of it, then you're going to wind up with people cutting through Yearwood still and going around the fence somehow just to get back to the back of this property. And I've just got a little concern about the safety of setting along the back side of this building back here to begin with waiting for your chance to get your cup of coffee or whatever it is that we're.
If I can elaborate a little further in speaking to my client, I think we're open to whatever this committee wants to say in regards to where the fence goes. I think we're willing to offer for your consideration that we would do the PVC along the north
That was
and
my
Yearwood
next-
side.
What's the cost differential between the PVC and there can't be much, so.
And then on
run
the south,
PVC
and then
all
on the
around.
south side with potentially my client developing that land in somewhat near future, we're doing the chain link just from a security standpoint, short term till whatever he comes up with on that south side of them, and that chain link's a lot easier to replace or take out and replace than a PVC fence. So I'll leave it up to you to make the choice of what you want to do. We're open and we're indifferent either way, but I think the obvious choice would be to go ahead and do PVC on the north and all the way down Yearwood, and on the south side along that buffer, just put in a chain link fence as a temporary stopgap for whatever potential project we may bring forth in the future on that south property.
And can I clarify, so will the fence run across where the stub road is going to be?
That is what I'm leaving up to you as a commission. We are indifferent either way. I know we would like the connection, the staff would like the connection. We don't, as long as this body's okay with the connection going away, because we don't have the opportunity based on what the county's already told us so far, that we would, if the stub is not there today, we're willing to put the fence and buffer all the way down the property line, and if said time ever did present itself in the future, we would come back or remove that if that stub location was ever available to be made connection, whether it be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, assuming my client and, the ownership group of the property would want to do that at that point in time. That's their choice at this point in time, just to go ahead and, close it off and be done with it. I mean, be a good neighbor. And if, because if based on what Mr. Hughes is saying in regards to that roadway structure that's out there, it's a very narrow very narrow roadway. I mean, part of what if the annexation would occur, what level of change would the city provide opportunity-wise for that roadway to be upgraded to provide, a sturdier pavement surface and or a cross-section to allow for vehicular traffic, whether that be cars or box trucks or maybe single-axle delivery trucks in regards to a truck, Coke truck or something like that. Those are lots of unknowns, and I think at this point in time, my client's good with, if we want to pursue the stubs at some point in time in the future, we can come back and remove a segment of fence and some trees to make that opportunity happen.
So you mentioned your client owns the property to the south of the subject property.
My client owns the next two properties, is in the process of finalizing the third property, and then owns the corner property on Louise.
So concern sounds like we've got for not having a secondary exit. If he already owns property to the south of this subject property, would it be possible for the developer to go ahead and put in a second outlet so that we could have two outlets to the subject property to the south where he already owns?
Correct. On that side, there is the opportunity, but we don't know what the full development of that design is in regards to those properties at this time. So that's why we provided just a stub with the knowledge of knowing we can make a connection to those properties. Since we are not finalizing all 4 tracks, we can't make that commitment at this time to make that. But our intent is when we do bring forth a project that there would be the opportunity for connection back to Rutherford and to Louise on that side to provide connectivity.
I think one other thing too is I'm starting thinking through this. If we do a solid wall, a solid fence all the way down through this section of the property, would we not end up asking for the same thing all the way to the end of the street? And are we closing off this entire development from a potential of walkability, the people in that neighborhood from using services in this community that may want to use services in the development?
I mean, that's, part of retail development is providing services for anyone that's in a certain radius of that structure. So, I mean, as a planner and designer, I think it's, a very important opportunity to provide some kind of connectivity between the adjacent neighborhoods and the development that you're proposing. In regards to being good neighbors, there's also that aspect on that side. As to the connectivity of this property back to these neighbors, as a planner, I'd say yes. And Matthew would agree with me on that regard. That's why, him and I see the light of that opportunity of making that vehicular connection. That's why we proposed it on that side. And making a pedestrian connection, whether that be a gap in the fence for a sidewalk to cut through, out to for the pedestrian to walk through, more or less where we showed it in the plan. We provide a gap in the fence that allows pedestrians to walk through there. But then getting back to Mr. Smotherman's point of providing safety for the neighborhood next door in regards to some criminal activity that may or may not occur in the property in the future, that provides an opportunity for that person to run out that back door. I mean, that's kind of the scale that you have to balance, and that's a hard scale to figure out what's more important. Is it providing the overall safety of the residents that live next door versus the opportunity for those residents that are next door to come utilize your facility versus having to go around the block to get there? So, I mean, that's kind of, a planning principle and a overall, principle of thinking about planning from a neighborhood standpoint.
I think the message that I got, and I don't know if everybody else heard it, but they don't want our traffic, they don't want our lights, they don't want our noise, they don't want us to bother them. And I get it. I understand what they're saying, and I don't want to. So my point is, if you're going to develop this property, it needs to be developed so that it has as little impact as it could possibly have on the people who's saying, don't do this to us. And I agree with them. I think they're right. I mean, if they were saying the opposite, the ones who decided to come tonight, if they had all stood up and said, we want access to these businesses, we're looking forward to them coming, we're going to look forward to sidewalks on Yearwood, we look forward to an improved street, if they'd have said that, I think we'd all been on the same page, but that's not the message that I got from them. So with the message that I received from them, I think that from a city standpoint and our growth, and of course, you know, trying to be respectful of what the county's message that they have sent us, and I won't say that was an emphatic no, but it sounds like a pretty good, we don't want you accessing commercial vehicles out on our roadway there. I mean, I don't see, even if we were to go back and ask, that I wouldn't be surprised if they said no again. And I mean, we're trying from a city and county standpoint to have a working relationship where we can work together. And I just think in this particular case, generally when we ask for that access point, it's because of safety concerns and access to get to the property if there's an emergency that we need to access the property and can get an emergency vehicle to it. In this particular case, we've got a good road in front of this property that will allow us access from any direction. So it's not a situation that we really need Yearwood to have a safe project on this property as far as providing emergency medical services or anything that might happen on this property. We've got good access to it. So from anything other than having access to a light, which was originally what we were kind of envisioning, I don't see the benefit of.
I think a good scenario to look at is exactly across the street. I mean, the strip center next across the street and the gas station, other than the fact you have maybe one more connection point to Rutherford and you have a southern connection to Louise, it backs up to the apartments next door. So there isn't a back door to that development, more or less, for both of those properties. So, I mean, this is mirrored effect on the other side of Rutherford, where you don't, you know, if we go ahead and close off the back of this to vehicular circulation, it's no different than what's already been conducted on the other side of the road for 10+ years on that side.
Right, and if it weren't for the drive-through, I would say just move the building back closer to the property line and be done with the drive-through thing, because, I mean, really, other than the benefit of having a drive-through across the back of the building, it would be just like what's across the street. There's no drive-through, I don't think, across the back of the buildings across the street that have the apartments backing up to them. So, is there?
No, there's not.
There's not a drive, there's just a side street on the side.
Yeah.
But there is a drive-through at the Dunkin' Donuts south of Main. They don't have any fences around them either, and they back up to residential. Just pointing that out.
It's the same development, 300 yards down the road that we're putting in here.
I would be more against a PVC fence on the north and south edge, just from the streetscape perspective. I mean, you're starting to make these little boxes. The PVC is even more visible than the black chain link. And I don't think makes for a nice street view.
Just my last comment on this, I'd like to see the developer come back with a plan for the whole development, maybe on this, even with the south side, before we move forward on this. That would be my opinion going forward.
I appreciate your opinion on that side of things, but I think knowing that he is not fully entitled to all the properties, it'd be hard for us to come back with a plan at this time. But knowing we are providing that stub to the south gives the opportunity that, you know, our parcel we're talking about tonight has the opportunity to make that connection to potential future access points in and out of this site and other sites on that side.
Sure.
As well as the one on the north side.
The Dunkin's apartments and a business. There's a pretty big difference between residential houses and apartments and a business. It looks like a fence.
Any other comments or questions?
So I'm willing to make a motion, kind of get us off dead center. We'll see where we go. I'm happy to make a motion as approved with the stub, to include the stub to Yearwood, and to include the fence on the northern part of the property. Think through this, not in addition to, but as a part of the landscape buffer.
Is that also along Yearwood you're speaking of, north and Yearwood?
That's not my motion, so it would be to be regular landscaping along Yearwood.
Okay, so what now? The fence along Yearwood is what you said?
The fence along the northern border where the drive-through would be, and then just the normal landscape buffer on Yearwood.
No fence.
No fence.
PVC fence on the north.
So I believe PVC fence on the north?
On the northern lot, against that northern lot
And
where the
then
drive-through.
double row of evergreens across the back.
Yes, ma'am.
And the access at Yearwood.
The stub. Yes, ma'am.
Stub.
That's the western side that parallels Yearwood,
The landscaping on the western side and then the stub on the western side.
but no fence on Yearwood side?
No.
The stub on the eastern side?
Actually, I think I said that wrong. The stub, this is getting fun. So the fence on the northern side, the stub on, I guess would be the eastern side of the property, and then the landscaping buffer also on the eastern side of the
The
property.
double row.
Yes, ma'am.
With the, would that be with the gap in the buffer where the stub would be?
So that's kind of tricky based on all the conversations we're having.
And excuse me for asking, we just want to be able to give, whatever the motion is, we just want to be able to give the applicant clear guidance for when they go to council.
I think I would do the stub only as my motion.
Is
Y'all
there
can
a-
change it
is
up
there
if
a-
you want to.
Is there a second on that before we have some discussion? Because I do have a question regarding that before we vote on it.
Can we restate it, please?
Sure.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
Sure.
Would you like to withdraw that and let us ask another question?
Yes, ma'am, I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to hear your thought process behind removing the PVC fence on Yearwood.
I think that I would not view necessarily the light pollution hitting Yearwood the same way I would view it hitting that northernmost parcel, even though I don't know that there's a residence on that direct northernmost parcel, at least close to that, based on what I looked at.
But it's just, I mean, here's the lighting issue. I mean, when they come around, everybody coming this way, here's the lights. That's the part that I was
Sure.
concerned about, is where the Stub Street's gonna be. That's where the light is, as they make this corner every time, you know, everybody going to get their donuts. That's,
Yeah,
of course, and that's a daytime.
I agree with Ms. Jones on that.
Okay.
Assumption.
I do too.
Or not assumption, but assertion.
So we're talking about with that potential PVC fence on the northern parcel and the eastern parcel.
Just,
And across the
Just-
stub.
my opinion is just along Yearwood.
Not the northern.
Right.
Don't do the cross
Okay.
sectional pieces. Just, again, starting that precedence of are we protecting every commercial
The eastern side is Rutherford Boulevard. I think y'all mean the western side, is that
Yearwood
right?
side?
I would go with using street names in regards to the
Yeah.
property, to be a better
Yearwood.
direction. You're trying to use east, west, south, north.
According to this, north is right that direction.
This would be east. Okay, yeah.
So yes, ma'am, I'd be fine with that also.
I'm with you.
Okay, so are you gonna make another motion?
I will, I'll be happy to. So
Any
I'll
other-
make a motion to include the PVC fence along the Yearwood Drive portion of the parcel. The standard buffer, I guess, everywhere else to the north and to the south, and then the stub to Yearwood for potential future connectivity if it were to be allowed. And I guess, is that it?
With the,
Landscape buffer going across it.
with the buffer going across the stub or a gap there? Or a buffer and the fence, rather?
That's where all your light pollution is going to be.
Across.
Okay.
I agree.
Across.
But no fence on the north side.
No fence on the north side.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand our motion?
But can we, before we go any further, clarify the landscaping associated with the whole thing for me, please? Is it, are we giving them the break, or is it still D?
So I think my motion would be the normal buffer on the northern parcel and the southern parcel, right? And then
The two rows,
Yes, ma'am.
normal as shown.
I'm with you.
And then the Yearwood parcel, the fence to be a part of the buffer, not in addition to the buffer.
And we have a standard cross-section in our zoning ordinance that incorporates a fence into a type D buffer. So I'm assuming that's what Mr. Mulcham will use in his design, will be what qualifies as a type D buffer, including a fence.
But your motion is still allowing for the stub connection going onto Yearwood, right?
Well, it's to be the stub there available for a future connection, but not a current connection. So you wouldn't currently have access, but it would be built out to where you could have future access if something changed.
So it'll be like 2 parking spaces right now.
But the fence
And
is
there'll
going to
be
go
a
across there?
fence
Right.
and
And the road.
the buffer
Okay,
across
okay.
it. Yeah, so it's blocked off.
I think at the end of the day, when you think about the design of that, it's probably just going to end up that you're going to have a curb going across there, and then the landscaping would be there, and then eventually, if and when the time came that opportunity would present itself, the trees and the fence would be torn out, and then the stub would be extended out to Yearwood if that was ever to occur.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
2 opposed.
Thank you all.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate your patience with us on all that and working with us.
I enjoy
on
discussion.
all those changes. Okay. I believe that next we have staff reports and other business.
My favorite part of the evening. And I won't call out any names, but we are less than a month from the end of the year. So if you don't have your continuing education, I'm trying not to make eye contact with the people.
You're going to send out something to remind those that need to be reminded.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and I will say right now, we do have a webinar on Friday, which will enable you to get 1.5 hours of credit. And as of right now, the website that we use has one on the 20th. They haven't allowed us to register yet, but I believe that those of you who have outstanding hours, if you attend those two, I think you should be good. So
If you don't.
if you don't, there will be videos sent home.
Gotta go to 3 classes.
But that's all I have, Ms. Jones.
That's it. Mr. Rice, okay. All right, and I guess the ladies on the other end don't have any?
No, ma'am. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you all. So then we stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.